That is it. That is all from Spectrum Center. The Hornets fall to the Boston Celtics 108-87. Welcome to the live postcast here, part of our offerings on Patreon, patreon.com/LOH. You can support the podcasting efforts that I do, that Walker Mail does, that David Walker is now doing. We've got, obviously, Locked On Hornets every weekday. You can get updated on the Charlotte Hornets. Plus, we've got the Restock, a sneaker podcast with David Walker. And then Let the Boys Watch, David and I getting together every week talking about TV, movies, Hornets, and NBA. Well, let's talk about this game. The Charlotte Hornets gets basted, roasted, toasted by the Boston Celtics 108-87. This is kind of the same Hornets team that you've seen win 3 games in a row. They just went up against a Boston Celtics team that was far more talented, was not going to let this feisty bench team back in the game, but the same Hornets team that we've seen over and over again, turnover prone, getting off to a slow start. They started off 7-2 in the early going in the first quarter, but then turnovers and bad offensive play, and then letting Gordon Hayward get started led to a bad first quarter, and then came out of the second half slow as well. And you had guys like Devontae Graham, P.J. Washington, 5 blocks in this game, and then also Cody Martin stepping in once again, making hustle plays, getting key rebounds, causing turnovers for the other team. Just doing those little things that can help your team get back in it. But this time, the Boston Celtics are far more talented. Make sure to chat with me. Get on YouTube, and you can chat, ask your questions. We've got some poll questions that I put up on the Locked On Hornets Twitter account, at Locked On Hornets, if you want to follow us on Twitter. I'm going to try to do that more for these games. Do some Twitter polls on the Locked On Hornets account. And of course, I'll be tweeting from my account, Doug Branson, LOH. The top line story from this game, though, obviously was Kemba Walker's return to Charlotte, his first regular season game against the Charlotte Hornets, and it happens in the Spectrum Center. The tribute video, an emotional game for Kemba Walker, and I don't think that he hid that it was an emotional game, and I think that Terry Rozier has obviously not hidden his emotions about his time, not only his time in Boston, but also he's made some references that, he's not Kemba Walker, that era is over, and that Terry Rozier is here to lead a new era of Charlotte Hornets basketball. So, this was a game that for both starting point guards could have been an opportunity for a revenge game, or it could have been an opportunity or an excuse to come out flat. And for both of these players, that's exactly what happened. Kemba Walker did not play well in the first half, had a much better second half. But Terry Rozier, let me read you the stat line. 1 of 11 from the field, 0 of 3 from beyond the arc, 3 points total in this game, 4 turnovers, 3 personal fouls. He picked a lot of those up early, really took himself out of this game. 3 rebounds, 2 assists, only 1 free throw attempt for Terry Rozier. You would see him in this game drive after drive, probing the defense, changing speeds, but not exactly knowing what to do after that. And that was, I think, the big problem for Terry. And I think it bogged down the offense for that starting unit until they would get Devontae Graham in there. And then Graham, just with the ball in his hands, he's much more decisive. You'll see him take it all the way in, and if nothing is there, he doesn't force up the shot. He sends it back around baseline and resets up the offense. It's strange. Terry Rozier not finishing around the rim either. I mean, Walker mentioned this during the show today, that Terry Rozier sort of probes the defense a lot like Chris Paul, but then doesn't know exactly how to finish. And I had seen him do that, but I'd also seen him score 20 points, in 2 straight games. But in this one, he just wasn't able to get any calls around the rim and wasn't able to put it in the cup. And it really hurt the team, because when he would try to pass out, and the problem is when he changes speeds, when he slows down as he drives, he allows the defense, and that Boston team, they've got a good defense, they collapse down in on Terry Rozier. and really made things difficult for him and for the Charlotte Hornets offense, especially that starting unit. And honestly, folks, I think we have to start talking about what this team looks like moving forward and if changes need to be made to a starting unit that simply isn't getting the job done right now. And it's not just against the Celtics, it's against the Pacers, it's against that depleted Golden State Warriors team. They had issues against the Kings, good teams, bad teams. This starting five that JB has assembled for the beginning of this season is simply not playing up to a standard necessary to give yourself a legitimate shot to win without incredible performances off the bench, which, fortunately they've been able to accumulate. I mean, you look at a guy like Bismack Biyombo, again, second straight efficient night for him. He gets 14 minutes off the bench. Cody Zeller was turning the basketball over, missing bunnies at the rim, not playing very effectively either. He's a player that had success early on in this season, but really his effect has faded. I don't understand. I mean, he's gobbling up rebounds and he certainly has size, but he's not affecting anything at the rim. You saw several plays where Biyombo was really altering what Boston wanted to do offensively because they had to pull up. They knew they could not go to the rim, otherwise Bismack was going to affect the shot. He finishes 4 or 5 from the field in this one, 8 points, 2 rebounds, and only 1 turnover in this one. But sometimes when the ball hits Biz's hands, there are issues. When you have that Graham-Bismack pick and roll, again, Graham's instinct as a point guard is to see a guy open at the rim and give him the ball. And sometimes it's just not as effective as it should be if you had just someone in there that had average offense. And so much of what's going on with the Hornets right now is that they have a lot of young players, a lot of players making bad decisions with the basketball, but then also you have a lot of these players like Bismack that are giving you significant help on one end and hurting you on the other. They're searching for two-way play right now, but they're not finding it. And I think Miles Bridges is actually a perfect example of that in this game. Fantastic offense from him. He was really the only starter that was giving you anything close to significant offense in this one. 8 of 14 from the field, 2 of 5 from beyond the arc. He really sparked the closest the Hornets got in this one, I would say, was second quarter stretch, about 3:49. PJ Washington gets beat off the dribble, but gets a chase down block on the baseline. That leads to a transition play. Devontae Graham pulls up, fake shot to a pass to a cutting Miles Bridges for the Yam. Then he has a 3 after that. They pull it to 41-37, so within 5. But then Zeller misses 2 absolute beauties at the rim. I mean, they were just set up perfectly for him to put it in, and he just couldn't do it, just couldn't get the job done. He only finishes with 5 points. But let me just say this, like between P.J. Washington in this game, Dwayne Bacon, Terry Rozier, I'll throw Marvin Williams in there, I'll throw Malik Monk in there. That's 5 players who you expect to get some production out of from beyond the arc. You only get 1 3 among those 5 players, and that was made by Dwayne Bacon. That's probably the player you would least suspect. Malik Monk continues to struggle to shoot outside. Marvin Williams has been a hero the past couple of games, but he struggled to shoot outside in this one. The Hornets finish as a team 6 of 31. This is a team that really started the year off on fire from beyond the arc, and a lot of that had to do with Devontae Graham. He was 2 of 10 in this one. He couldn't get it going from outside. But over the past 3 games, except for the second half against Indiana, this team has not been able to shoot from outside. And so those struggles continue. And when you pair that with an inability to defend consistently, and you also pair that with 20 turnovers in this game, leading to 17 Boston Celtics points, just going to be tough to win. And for what seems like all 8 games, they win the battle of bench points, 49-34, but that's no longer a good thing. It's no longer a positive that the Charlotte Hornets are winning the battle of the bench points. They need to, at some point, win a battle amongst the starters. And in this one, listen, the Boston Celtics are number 1 in the East. There's a reason for that. Kemba Walker finally got things going, started dropping some threes, in and out dribble for his first bucket past P.J. Washington. He had a great second half. But then you look at a guy like Jason Tatum, who just, it seemed like every possession that he had the ball in his hands, it was a mismatch. He was getting plays against Graham. He was getting plays against Monk and against Rozier. Tatum is just too big for that. He's just too long. He's too effective. He's too skilled. He finishes the game with 23 points, 9 rebounds, 1 assist. He throws in 2 steals. You saw the Boston Celtics get opportunities against the Hornets to get out into transition, and they converted in those opportunities. And then Gordon Hayward's story of the first half for the Celtics, 20 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists. A lot of that on Miles Bridges. He was a guy that I mentioned, great on offense, not very good on defense. And it wasn't just a one-on-one play. He was getting back cut, falling asleep on defense. It's just not the kind of effective two-way play, I think, that you would expect out of a player like Miles Bridges. You need him. You need him to do it on both ends. He finishes the game with 18 and 10, did have 4 turnovers. On a night when nearly everyone was miserable on offense, it's very difficult to complain about what Miles Bridges did. But at the same time, they're trying to create a defensive identity that does not allow easy buckets. And he made things very easy on Gordon Hayward at the beginning of this game and allowed them to outscore the Hornets by 10 in the first quarter, and then they get outscored 33-24 in the third quarter. And that's really all you need to know, folks. First quarter, third quarter, that's where the Hornets have been getting killed. They've been making strides in the second quarter, late third. That's when the bench has been playing, and it's just been very difficult for the Hornets to get anything going with that starting unit. So, at some point it has to become a trend. At some point somebody has to ask a question. What do you do? Do you get Devontae Graham in there with Terry Rozier? You saw moments where Devontae Graham, Rozier, Martin, that trio that you paired with either PJ or Miles, and then maybe Biz. That was what won you the game against the Indiana Pacers. The energy, the Devontae Graham driving and finishing and knocking down shots, that's what won against Indiana. It actually did spark a little bit of a run in the late third quarter for the Charlotte Hornets, but they weren't able to fully capitalize because of how talented Boston is. But I'm not saying you start Cody Martin. And I don't know, I think you do consider starting Devontae Graham alongside Terry Rozier. There are some things that you're going to give up, but at least you'll have a shot at starting a game well. At least you can, or I don't know, maybe even just put Devontae Graham in the third quarter. Don't start him, but put him in the third quarter along with Terry Rozier so that you don't get off to such a miserable start in the second half, and you give your team a shot to get into one of these games and stay into one of these games against good teams, because I think this is going to continue to happen, and you can't, you're not always going to play a Pacers team that is completely depleted, a Warriors team that is completely depleted. Those were rare opportunities against those teams, and you see what happens when the Charlotte Hornets play. I think they played the exact same way. I do, folks. I think this was the exact same team that you saw go up against the Indiana Pacers. It's the exact same team that you saw go up against the Golden State Warriors. It was just a far different result because the Boston Celtics, a far superior team. Not to mention the fact that the Boston Celtics, 18 of 23 from the free throw line. That was a big difference from the Indiana Pacers game where the Pacers could not get a call. And then the Boston Celtics sort of allowing the Hornets to stay around for a little while simply because they were not shooting the three ball well themselves. Kemba Walker missing a lot of those as he comes back. But the reception was good for Kemba Walker. It was a warm reception there in Spectrum Center. The video was good. Kemba, very, again, class act, a tough situation, how he left the franchise, not really... No blame to go around for Kemba. I think you can lay some blame at the feet of the organization for slow-footing their decision on what they would ultimately do with Kemba Walker, for not anticipating his growth, for not understanding that he was an all-NBA candidate and what that would mean for their financials. I think there's a lot of blame to go around for this franchise that it's constantly signed players to long-term contracts players that did not step up and become a solid number 2 scorer for the Charlotte Hornets to take some pressure off of Kemba, and ultimately those contracts, we're talking Nick Batum, Marvin Williams, Cody Zeller, those contracts ultimately resulting in there not being enough left around when it was time to really sign Kemba. Because they signed Kemba before, and they got a discount. But when it came time to really pay the ultimate evolution of Kemba Walker, they weren't able to do it because of the long-term strategy that they executed on, and it came back to bite them. But Kemba Walker, to his credit, no ill will towards Michael Jordan, no ill will, obviously, to the fans. He loved the fans. He was emotional when he broke the all-time scoring record, Del Curry's record in Charlotte. He will remain, I think, a large part of this franchise for the foreseeable future. And, obviously records are made to be broken, but I think Kemba's all-time scoring record for this Charlotte franchise should hold for quite a while. Again, the Hornets lose this one against Boston. They fall to 4-4 in the East, back to 500, 108-87. We'll be back on the horn. Nada Edwards going to join us on Locked On Hornets tomorrow via phone. He will give his thoughts. He was in Spectrum Center. He has a new newsletter out, Dispatches from Spectrum. Check that out online. Google Dispatches from Spectrum. It pops right up. The Hornets, they'll have to pop right up. They've got a Saturday, Sunday back-to-back. It starts with a game against the New Orleans Pelicans. Hopefully you get a bounce-back game for Devontae Graham, who, for all of the praise that he has gotten this season, so much of it deserved, he has been lately off and on, hot and cold, taking every other game. His shooting takes every other game off. And this one, after being really the big force offensively for the Hornets over in that win over Indiana, he goes 2 of 10 from 3 in this one. So God help the New Orleans Pelicans. They're going to need a lot of help to guard Devontae Graham, because I expect him to come out and drop a really good game against them. But really, I'm just interested to see what happens with this starting unit. If there is a change that needs to be made, they've obviously got a day to think about it before having to take on the Pelicans. That one will be at home again. This one, no real notes in the fourth quarter. It became garbage time for the Charlotte Hornets. They'll have to pick up the pieces as they have another game on Saturday against the New Orleans Pelicans, and then Sunday against the Philadelphia 76ers. So the Pelicans right now struggling without Zion Williamson. I think a lot of people expected the Pelicans to be okay, not as great without one of your best players in Zion, and that's how great he is. Rookie, hadn't played a game in the NBA, but was going to be one of the Pelicans' best players, because that's the kind of impact that he makes on the floor. But they were supposed to be okay. Brandon Ingram's played really well, but the team itself has struggled. So the Hornets will have another opportunity to get a win on Saturday. But then Sunday against the Philadelphia 76ers, that's a team that's locked in. Might be without Ben Simmons. There's a little bit of an injury issue with Simmons right now. He's kind of on the fence whether or not he was out tonight, I believe. They had a game tonight. He was out on the fence about whether he'll play against the Charlotte Hornets on Sunday. All right, that's it for this Postcast Live. We'll be doing these all season long. Thank you for supporting us on Patreon if you do support us on Patreon. And if you don't support us on Patreon, I do ask that you consider doing so, because we're doing a lot of this for free. We're doing a lot of this for you as a Hornets fan, to keep you informed, to keep you excited about this Hornets team. Tough loss tonight, but I'm still excited. I think there's a lot of young talent, a lot of potential, a lot of fighters on this team. Cody Martin, he's getting on the floor. He's getting big rebounds. I think that's interesting. I think Devontae Graham is going to continue to become a great player. You saw that one-on-one matchup that he had with Kemba Walker, looking like the Spider-Man meme, pulling out each other's moves. That was pretty cool. All right, that's it for this Postcast. I'll see you tomorrow on Locked On Hornets.